everybody. Thanks for joining me today, first of all. So I've decided that I'm going to start out my vlogs with a quote each time because quotes really mean a lot to me and they get me through my day most of the time. So this quote today says, "Excellence is to do a common thing in an uncommon way," said by Booker T. Washington. And I pulled that quote from an app called Daily Quote. It's a blue icon. It's definitely an app worth getting because I use it every single day and it never fails to brighten my day a little bit in the morning. So this vlog today is about my story with my mental health. My hopes with this video is to destigmatize mental health because it's not something that should still be stigmatized. If you're watching this video, I'm sure that you agree with me in some capacity. So my biggest thing that I struggle with my mental health is anxiety. I have a lot of anxiety surrounding just my daily life. As a kid, I remember being like extremely anxious just about a lot of different things, but I always was afraid that my mom was gonna die. So I developed strategies to deal with that as a kid. So I would, like, if she was away from me, I would call her a bunch. If she didn't pick up, then I would spiral. And it was just this whole thing that happened as a kid. So had that anxiety just kind of more general. And another thing for me was I had developed a really bad phobia. So it's called emetophobia. I believe that I'm pronouncing that right, but I could be wrong.
Come on, come on, come on.
Which is a really like bad fear of vomit, like whether that's myself vomiting or someone else around me throwing up. Like, it gives me immense anxiety. I first realized that that wasn't something that everyone else was dealing with when I was a sophomore in high school, and all my friends kind of talked about vomit in like a very normalized sense. And for me, it was just like, whoa. So I was thinking, like, how can you guys talk about this in such like a normal way? Isn't it like a big deal to you? I felt very different because of that. It gave me like a lot of anxiety to think about myself dealing with it. So when in a context, someone would get sick around me, or I would get sick myself, which didn't happen, I would have panic attacks. I would hyperventilate. It's not that it was gross to me, it's that it was disturbing. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't really understand about like the phobia part of it, is like it's not just that I'm grossed out by it. Like, yeah, it's gross. It was deeply disturbing to me. As a teenager, when I started talking about it and how I would react like that, I would self-stigmatize. So I would get irritated with myself by not being able to deal with it in a constructive way. I'm afraid of throw up and I feel really stupid about that, is essentially like what I was saying. And that was causing it to get worse. When I was just about to leave at my first college that I went to, Bennington College, a couple months prior, a lot had changed in my life. Like, I graduated high school, I got out of a relationship that I was in for a lot of years. Things were changing and I was about to move 4 hours away to Bennington, Vermont, and it was my first time really being away from home. I was really used to staying in my comfort zone at the time. What happened was my anxiety about, pushing myself out of my comfort zone. It kind of like triggered this phobia to a point where it was kind of uncontrollable. So I had immense anxiety about feeling sick or being sick. So in turn, that anxiety convinced me that I felt sick all the time. So this went on for months. I basically like didn't eat because I thought that everything was gonna make me sick to my stomach, and I was just trying to avoid that at all costs. Once I got to school, I was surrounded by a bunch of other people, and the thought of other people around me like getting sick was extremely like anxiety provoking. So I started to develop obsessive compulsive tendencies in order to not get sick. So I would wipe down with Clorox wipes, like, surfaces, door handles, like whatever was communal. like at the very least just once a day. It was usually like 3 times, however many times like I felt the need to do it. I would like envision the germs on my hands, and I would envision germs on like a surface, and I could almost like feel like this grunginess, and could not move forward with whatever I had to do until I took care of it. So from emetophobia, I ended up developing germaphobia, and then ended up developing OCD in order to deal with just the thought of germs infecting my body. So this was bad. I ended up leaving Bennington for a multitude of reasons, but the primary reason was, you know, just I couldn't stay out of my comfort zone. I didn't have the tools to thrive in the area that I was in. So I ended up leaving after my first term, and I came home, which was really good for me because I realized that I really like needed to get my mental health in check before I did anything else with my life. I started going back to see my therapist, and I told her about, you know, what was going on in terms of like the OCD and in terms of the phobia just kind of taking over my life. And she helped me to develop strategies in order to deal with it. The one that I implemented the most was compassion towards myself. So instead of self-stigmatizing and calling the phobia stupid, just treating it as if it was a part of me that was struggling and something that shouldn't be hated. So implementing the tools and strategies that I had developed with my therapist helped me when I worked in a pharmacy. So obviously you're going to be dealing with some sick people in a pharmacy. I was a pharmacy tech. The thought of dealing with people that were sick, like giving out like Tamiflu and, you know, antibiotics for strep throat and things like that, like was very anxiety provoking for me because I was a germaphobe. I was probably averaging washing my hands like at least 10 times an hour. Every time I had a customer, I would instantly go back and wash my hands. Another thing was I had to like perform these rituals, but I felt very ashamed of them, so I didn't want anyone to like really notice it. So I ended up really kind of being exposed to a stressor, and from that I was able to kind of implement exposure therapy for myself. There was one particular time when I had a coworker who just had come back from being really, really sick. She had like the full-blown flu, stomach flu combined, and she came back, and I was second shift, so I came while she was still there, and there was a little bit of overlap time. And the thought of using the computer after her without wiping it down was very anxiety provoking. I was standing there like festering with anxiety, thinking about my like plan of action. As soon as she leaves, I'm gonna wipe down the keyboard, and then I'm gonna wipe down the phone, and everything I did in a sequence that was like least germs to the most germs, so that the Clorox wipe wasn't infected before it got to the next thing. But I knew like what my course of action would be. Well, my supervising pharmacist had asked me to do something on the computer. I couldn't do it because I needed to do the ritual first, and I had such immense anxiety from it. I felt like I was gonna cry. I didn't know what to do. So I told him I'll do this like as soon as I can just like wipe everything down, but I don't want to make her feel bad, so I'm gonna wait until she leaves. But I can't do it until everything's wiped down. It gives me like a lot of anxiety. So luckily he understood, and he could actually relate in some senses. So, and I had known that about him. That's why I felt kind of comfortable telling him. But the anxiety that I was feeling having to tell him that I couldn't move forward until I performed the rituals, you know, I felt very overwhelmed and like I wanted to cry. So he let me kind of hang out for a little bit until she left, and then I performed the ritual. That was probably like the most prominent memory that I have from working in the pharmacy and also dealing with this phobia at the same time and the rituals around OCD. Through this experience, I was able to push the rituals behind OCD aside for myself and go on with my activities of daily living, but it definitely is something that I think about constantly. So I'll find myself feeling really anxious, and that's my resort, is to slip back into the rituals. So I have to be very conscientious of that and also not let myself get to the point where I'm under immense stress and anxiety. That being said, I do work my best under a certain amount of stress where I can get things done like efficiently. So it's kind of a catch-22 with staying grounded with me. During this time, I had thought about being a pharmacist. I had thought about being a tattoo artist, being an artist in general, pursuing music. There were a lot of things that I had been kind of like back and forth with myself about, but nothing felt really right. The thing that felt closest to right at the time was being an art teacher. When I applied to Wells College, it was the beginning of 2018, and I had decided that I wanted to be a chemistry teacher. So I thought to myself, okay, pharmaceuticals, chemistry, like teaching, let's just do that. Still didn't feel right. In August of 2018, the registrar called me and he asked what my intended major was. And I had been like looking through the majors that Wells College offered and like the minors to humor myself. Just totally on a whim, I said to him, psychology, and then I'll minor in holistic health studies. The way that I got into doing what I'm currently doing and what my career path is was completely like on a whim. I had this preconceived notion that psych was something that individuals came to college to study if they had nothing better to do. And that was why I had kind of strayed away from it. Here I am studying psych, and I absolutely love it, and I couldn't imagine devoting my life to anything else. After the point of deciding my major and my minor, everything else really fell into place.